Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. And I do want to let everyone know, in case you didn't get the little message on your screen, that we are recording this today. Welcome to our special interim state policy meeting. We actually didn't originally have this one scheduled, but we thought it was such an important topic that we wanted to go ahead and sneak it in here in October, in between our regularly scheduled September and November meetings. So welcome to all of you who are here to learn about youth leadership in advocacy. And to hear in particular from our three expert guest panelists who we will get to momentarily because they are the stars of our show today. In case you are not familiar with SchoolHouse Connection, although I suppose most of you are, we are a national nonprofit organization working to overcome homelessness through education. We provide technical assistance to schools. We have a youth leadership and scholarship program, which I love. And we do federal and state policy, which is, of course, why most of you are here today as a part of our state policy community of practice. Please make sure to sign in on the virtual whiteboard. I know that Lisa put that link into the chat, so you can just pop in the chat and click on that and let us know who you are and that you're here, and you can answer our question for the icebreaker, so we can just kind of help to get to know each other a little bit better. But now I want to jump right into our topic today. We have a shorter meeting today with only an hour, and I want to make sure our expert panelists have plenty of time. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into our topic. This, of course, today is the importance of youth leadership in all kinds of advocacy. We're focused on state policy advocacy, of course, but this is really an essential part of every piece of the work that SchoolHouse Connection does. And I believe probably for most of you on the Zoom, it's an important part of everything you do as well. We really strive to engage youth with lived experience in every aspect of our programming and our leadership. We believe they are the experts, at least in terms of policy advocacy, the experts on which policies we should be pursuing and how to approach them. We know they're the best advocates with legislators at both the state, federal, and local level as well. And their perspectives are just invaluable. They're creative, they're innovative. They have really great ideas and provide us with feedback that really we need in order to do our jobs well. So our philosophy and our belief is that if we want to improve our programs, policies, and practices, we have to engage as many youth as we can, as often as we can. And so we do try to prioritize that, budget for it, and make it just a real critical part of everything that we're doing in our work. Our Director of Youth Leadership and Scholarship, Jordan Rourke, developed together with our young leaders, developed Principles of Youth Engagement, which is sort of an 11-step program to ensure safe and respectful opportunities for authentic leadership and engagement of young people in work. So we have a little short bit.ly link there. Hopefully, maybe Lisa, if you could help and paste that into the chat, if you don't mind. You don't need to look at this right now, but we did want to make sure that you have the link because we think it's a really good document, and you know, our youth and young leaders contributed to it and made sure that it looked, you know, accurate and good based on their perspective and their points of view. So we think it's a pretty good document. So it might be something to help ground you in sort of specifically what are the specific steps and actions you all can take in your own work to help advance authentic youth leadership in the activities that you're undertaking in your organizations. So we wanted you to have that as a resource, but we are really here today to hear from, again, our expert panelists, and I am going to give them all the opportunity to introduce themselves, and then I'm going to ask them a series of questions. When I get through my questions, I will invite all of you to ask questions as well, but we're not going to do that like live over the Zoom. I'm going to ask everyone to type their questions into the chat box. So as we go through the conversation with Cece, Irene, and Roxana, please feel free to type your questions into the chat box at any time. The reason why I want to do it through the chat and not just open up the mics and let you all jump in and ask is because part of our principles of youth engagement is to make sure that our young people, you know, feel protected and understand that there's a little bit of a buffer between them and anyone who might, through no bad intention at all, but might ask a question that might be inappropriate or re-traumatizing. So I'm going to screen the questions. So that's why we're going to ask you to put your questions into the chat instead of asking them live. But our young people have approved of the questions that I'm asking them. So I'm just going to jump in and start with our questions for Cece, Irene, and Roxana. And the first one is pretty easy. Just tell us a little bit about yourselves, introduce yourselves to us, and I'm going to leave this open. We're going to go with the awkward silences. I'm not going to put anyone in a certain order. So you all can just jump in when you feel comfortable and when you feel ready to speak, and kind of fight amongst the three of you for, who goes first, second, and third. But so just first question, introduce yourselves, expert panelists.
Okay, I'll go ahead and go first. My name is Irene Sauceda. I graduated from Texas State University with a degree in social work in 2016. I am currently a youth peer leader for SchoolHouse Connection, and I do lift on the side.
Thanks, Irene.
Okay, I guess I'll go next. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Roxana. I'm an FIU student, and that's located in Miami, Florida International University. I'm majoring in public administration. I'm still a junior, and my favorite hobby, I guess, to cheer things up is to walk my dog to parks and beaches.
Nice, thanks, Roxana.
Hi, everybody. My name is Cecilia. I was a 2020 Schoolhouse Scholar, and currently I'm a second-year undergraduate at UCLA, majoring in molecular cell and developmental biology. And yeah, I guess like a fun fact about me is this week I actually just got a job working in UCLA's hospitals with a team that helps like facilitate research projects, which I'm pretty excited about.
Wow, very cool. Cecilia, congratulations. I made it through, I think, 1.5 classes of biology in college before I dropped it. So I'm very impressed with your major. So again, another question for all of you. You all have done lots of different kinds of advocacy at different levels. So Irene and Cece, I know you've both spoken directly to policymakers at the federal level. Irene has testified before the Texas state legislature. I know, Cece, you're doing public speaking. I know you're advocating in your own school district back home where you went to high school. Roxana just does tons of stuff. I mean, you're a leader on your campus across Miami-Dade. I know you're involved in all kinds of youth leadership opportunities and legislative opportunities. So I guess my question is, all of this work, I mean, this is a lot of work, policy advocacy. It takes up time. And I know Roxana and I were talking about this yesterday, and I remember you said, don't call it work, don't call it work. But I guess my question is, what motivates you to share your stories and to get involved in these public ways with public policy?
Okay, personally, I've always been told that knowledge is power. So the way that I kind of look at it is that I'm providing knowledge to give others the power to help with the cause. The people who actually have the ability to make a larger impact than, one individual person. And I mean, who doesn't want to eradicate youth homelessness, right? So that's a big motivator.
So my motivation and, just being able to get in the room where people are making decisions in our government and our systems is to just be able to give back, because I mean, obviously I feel like everyone knows I'm a panelist, so I've had lived experience, and just being able to, even if it's a little grain of salt, to make some type of impact, to let them know my perspective, what other youth, for example, like in my county, the barriers they've encountered. And even though it can be exhausting at the end of the day, and even though it's tough to tell people a million times what needs to be changed, it's worth it in the end when you see the results of like months work and the improvement that ends up maybe not 100% as you envisioned it to be, but it's changed regardless, and it's a step forward.
Thanks, Roxana.
Yeah, and I can go next. I think since like starting college and working with Schoolhouse and getting involved with like organizations here at UCLA, I have learned like what aid there is out there, and like that there is enough aid to meet a lot of kids' basic needs. And I watched like in my own high school, like a lot of kids just slip under the radar and like not get properly identified. And I think my main motivation is like I want to help students get properly identified so they can begin like accessing aid they need so they can like succeed in the future.
Thank you. Thank you, all three of you, for helping us, see what your motivations are. Part of the purpose of this panel today is to help some of the adults on the Zoom understand, what are good things that they can do to increase youth leadership in their own organizations, and what maybe are some things that they should avoid doing. So for the next question, I'm wondering if you can share a specific example of a time that you worked with a group of mostly adults. It might have been a speaking engagement, it might have been an advocacy situation or something else, but when you were working with a group of mostly adults and you felt comfortable, you felt prepared, you really felt engaged and respected, what was that like, and what are things that you think the group did well to help you really feel good about the experience?
Okay, so one of my first speaking engagements, I was emailed beforehand, given all of the details of the event, who I would be speaking to, where I would be speaking, how many people would be there, where to look if I got nervous, how long the event would be, exactly how long I had to speak, and told that it was okay if I went over or under. Not to be offended if people came or went considering their schedules. I was speaking to Congress people, I believe. And then let's see, aside from emailing me, I also received a prep phone call, and that was really nice because I ended up having more questions than I initially thought to put in the email. And despite all this preparation, I was still a mess. I ended up breaking down crying in front of Congress people, and I even got a hug from one. But then after the event, there was so much care taken. They took so much care of me. So first they allowed me to have some time alone to kind of like regroup myself, come back to myself. And then let's see. To decompress, yeah. And then we went out and we did some fun things. We went to eat at this really cool restaurant, and we also got to walk around this town that I had never been in and seen a lot of cool things. And that kind of helped me get back to where I was and not like feeling on that same raw level as I was when I broke down in tears. So yeah, I think all of that really helped.
Thanks, Irene.
Wow, just to think that your first speaking engagement was to Congress, that's insane. Kudos to you. My first speaking engagement was at a really local level to commissioners here in Miami-Dade County. And I had a great experience. Much like Irene, I had an email with talking points. Obviously I was walked through how to like make my own talking points that would correlate with what we were speaking on. We met a couple times before the event as well, so it was in a timely manner. And I think what was most impactful of me being able to successfully speak was the fact that in the youth group that I was in, the youth advocacy group, the one who was leading us, like our supervisor, I guess you could say, she had lived experience. So she, just off the bat, that created an environment of trust, and that created an environment of, if you don't want to share your story, that's fine. If you have something to speak about that needs to be changed, that's what we need. And so there wasn't this constant like persistence where like you need to share your story, you need to let people know what is going on, and it kind of feels really overwhelming and intimidating because you're asking that youth to be vulnerable when they already were in the past, and having to share, people, especially now, it's really popular storytelling. But if you ask a youth that was homeless and probably experienced parental neglect and all these other things, there is an emotional baggage that comes with that. Having them speak and share their story multiple times is experiencing the trauma over and over again. and that takes a toll. So just given, like Irene said, given the option of either sharing your story or what did you see that needed to be changed, and also just giving them the space and patience to decide if they feel prepared to share is pretty crucial. And also having someone that they can trust with lived experience, or just someone in general that they can trust to be able to share.
Thanks, Roxana.
Yeah, thank you, Roxanne. I mean, those are all like really great points, and a lot of what I wanted to say too. But I think I don't have as much experience with like speaking, but in like a general sense, kind of what is really important to me is the same thing about being really transparent about like what's expected for the meeting, what kind of questions you could be asked, how long, what's expected of you. And something else, a big point that's been really important to me is just following through on exactly what you commit to with the youth. Like, I think when you've grown up with you've had lived experience, you've grown up with a really unstable life. And I think it can be harder to trust people who don't follow through for you. And so I think it's just really important to like, be quick to respond, follow through on everything you commit to, and then like validate the feelings of the youths.
Thanks, Cecilia. Okay, so this is kind of a negative question, but I think it's important to give you the opportunity to talk about this as well. So I want to ask you the converse question. Have you ever been involved in any kind of advocacy speaking, working with a group of adults, et cetera, where you have felt uncomfortable, underprepared, disrespected, or where, it just really did not go well from your point of view? And what do you think caused that? And what do you think the group could have done better?
Okay, so let's see. During college, I was asked to speak about my homeless experience for an organization that I wasn't exactly a part of. Let's see. It was a larger organization, so I was like honestly pretty excited to do it. So I kind of like said yes, or I accepted their invitation kind of blindly. That was on me. Let's see. A representative of the organization took me to get clothes for the event, which I thought was really cool. But I didn't really know this representative very well, so it was kind of awkward. Let's see. They had emailed me about like transportation logistics, but I don't think I completely understood what the event was that I was speaking at. Let's see. They just told me to tell my story. So once I did that, and once the entire event had like proceeded, I didn't really feel like what I spoke about had anything to do with the organization. It was like a very small component of my experience that tied them into my topic. And so I felt kind of like, I just felt like I didn't really belong there. So then immediately after I spoke, it was like one of those luncheons where you just kind of sit down and you eat with everybody. So I didn't really have time to decompress, and people were just like walking up to me and trying to like, I don't know, I guess congratulate me on like overcoming homelessness during a time where I still felt very raw and vulnerable. And also we were supposed to eat, but I didn't feel like eating immediately after kind of telling a bunch of strangers about my life and all the hardships we experienced. So that was kind of bad. I think maybe they could have offered, a safe space for me to kind of just step away for a second before coming back and joining everybody. Also maybe have built better rapport with me, which again, my bad for, kind of jumping on it, but there was a lot of time in between the event and when they had asked me to speak that they could have perhaps reached out to me a little bit more, or at least given me like a point of contact. Let's see. I guess that's it for that one. I just felt like I didn't really belong there.
Thanks, Irene. I'm awfully sorry that happened.
So I guess I'll go next. That has always been kind of like my fear when I'm been like asked to speak, is having a bad experience, being misinterpreted, or taken the wrong way. And I guess I haven't had that, thankfully, but I guess the only like negative kind of like experience with like public speaking is like when like organizations like for example, like prior to like those luncheon events or whatnot, they like ask you to speak to like journalists to get the word out of the event. And so, I mean, I feel like most people know that journalists can be very annoying, to be quite frank, but a lot of the time they like expect you, not just the journalists, but the people of the organization that you're going to be speaking for, or you're being invited to, they're expecting you to like share everything. They're, there's a huge like expectation of, oh my God, like you went through homelessness, like give us all the details of what happened and do this and do that. And so it shouldn't be, they shouldn't be taking the assumption that we're going to share everything. We're the youth need to be shown some type of like respect, and like be and I'm sorry, they just need to be shown respect, and that people are able to allow them to have boundaries, because when they're proposed to speak at engagements, they're put under this spotlight where now they're like either pressured into or just feeling that they have to share everything with everyone. And then once you really do that, you literally feel like so, besides exposed, you feel like so empty, like you have nothing else to yourself now but what you just shared of your life. And it kind of puts on you like that you're like defined by what happened, and it's such an emotional experience. And to have, if people really want to help youth, they shouldn't be making them go through that experience. They shouldn't be having them, like Irina's saying, like be so raw. Like this, you have rights to your privacy and to what's happened, and you also have the rights to advocate and help others who have been in your same situation. And those two things are not like mutually exclusive. They do not mean the same thing. And so giving youth the space to create their own boundaries is another big thing. And then giving them the respect and not pressuring them to speak about every single thing because they probably just can't.
Thank you for raising that issue of the press, Roxanne. I wasn't even thinking about that, but that's a really, really important issue, especially these days where if you say something and you end up in a tweet or in an article, then anybody Googles you for the next 100 years and that's going to come up, and it really is super invasive. I appreciate you raising that.
Yeah, thank you. And I can speak on this a little bit. So like I said, I don't have as much experience with like public speaking, but what I will say is like from my experiences, like especially with my high school, is like when I repeatedly tried to like reach out, and you're sharing these like, sharing about these really like emotional topics, and it is very raw. And then I've just been met with like little to no response from them. And then it just feels like they're very apathetic to the issue if you're not getting like at least like a proper response back, I would say.
Yeah, thanks, Cecilia. When you put yourself out there, people have to be respectful of that and at least somewhat responsive, even if they can't necessarily do everything that you're asking them to do. Like they should at least acknowledge what you've done and how you've put yourself out there. Thanks all of you. I've got just a couple more questions for you. What would you say to this group of folks on the Zoom today are important things that adults can do to prepare young people to participate fully in groups of mostly adults. So that might be a meeting where there are, one or two or a small group of young people, but it's mostly adults. It could be some of these different kinds of speaking events we're talking about. But what do you think are important things that adults can do, not only to, empower the young people, but also the work that we need to do on ourselves so that we are listening better, not taking over, not taking control, so that we're creating a space in ourselves that's more appropriate for youth leadership?
I kind of created like a general bullet list, but during the meeting or group, you can be an advocate for the young person who's sitting there with you. Take into consideration that you're a professional and you have a specific skill set and more knowledge perhaps regarding other things than the youth might know about. So like acronyms, maybe create a cheat sheet for the youth. I remember going to like a task force meeting and not really knowing what any of the acronyms meant. And it was kind of intimidating. It made me not really want to ask questions because I didn't know what I was referring to. And then I felt embarrassed that I didn't know what the acronyms meant because I felt like maybe I should. And I was just so young. So an attendee cheat sheet. So like sometimes if you're in a group, you might want to say something regarding something specific that only one person in the group would benefit from. But if you don't know who's who or what they do, then you might not know who to speak to. So maybe like nameplates with like their company or their position in that company. And then just the prep email containing who, what, when, where, why, what the youth's role is in attending this group or this event. Even a prep phone call to prepare the youth, letting them know, what's okay and what's not okay, what they need to share, what they don't need to share. And then just to also verify if they still want to participate, because 2 weeks before an event, might be great and I might be enthusiastic about it, but then maybe, a day or two before, like I might feel like really anxious about it. And something might something might have happened that all of a sudden I don't feel like I can speak about these things that we're discussing at this group or something like that. Let's see. And then let's see. Oh, letting the youth know, it's okay if you don't understand what we're talking about, like ask questions. And if you don't know what to ask, maybe ask for clarification, because there's nothing more disheartening than feeling like you're incompetent and you don't know what to ask. So that's all I got.
Yeah, and along those lines, giving, like I said before, giving them space, but that means more than just giving them the space to speak before the event. It really means listening to hear them. They listen to your story and then they have like so much advice to give you, and you're like, well, gee, thanks for your advice. It's a little late though now. And so a lot of people, like, they feel like they can give you some sort of token of like knowledge as to why you went through what you went through or what you could have done when you were going through that, but they don't realize that that's completely useless at this point. So giving them the space to speak and listening to hear, not to respond to what they're saying. And I think it was crucial what Irene said, giving them after the speaking engagement, somewhere to decompress and literally just breathe. Because how can you just go from being so vulnerable to, like she said, like to just speaking, to just eating and just, great. I'm so happy that now everyone knows my story and all of you are so proud of me for going through this. Obviously you appreciate that people are sharing joy because you overcame something, but it's hard to go from one feeling to another, to doing things that easily, especially if you have the lived experience, because there's just too much emotional baggage to literally sort through. So yeah, I'm sorry if I rambled.
No, not at all. Thank you.
Yeah, Roxana brings up a really good point of like people trying to like offer you like a token of their advice. Like I think like kind of a response that I have kind of come to just like really dislike if when people are like, oh wow, good job, that made you so tough, or like that made you so good at being independent. And it's like, I mean, it's not very, it's not helpful, and it's like you would have rather not had to go through your experiences. And I think also in a more general sense, just like be aware that these students like do have lasting mental health issues, like especially like, either ask them or be conscious that like they may have lasting issues with like anxiety and depression. And I think just like also more surface level thing is like a lot of us didn't have like parents who were professionals. So I think it's kind of just helpful to just be like, hey, here's what you should wear. Here's the kind of manners you should have. Here's kind of what is expected out of you for like how you should speak. Because I know like some of us are just, we didn't grow up in that kind of environment. So we don't know what's like the proper like manners to have. And just the same thing about like listening really carefully, and just listen with like the lens of like that you understand like the lens of their background and like how they were raised and how that kind of impacts you as a whole person, I would say.
Thank you. Okay, this one is a little bit more, I guess, kind of specific than some of the other questions in terms of what are some of the tangible barriers that can make it hard for youth to participate in meetings or events, like sort of more physical barriers, tangible ones, and what specific supports would help young people be able to participate in those kinds of things more easily?
Again, I kind of created a general list. So lack of transportation, and the way you could help is either by giving a ride, a bus ticket, offering to Uber or Lyft them wherever they need to go. Lack of clean or appropriate clothing. Maybe you could offer a place to do laundry or a trip to a clothing store or a laundromat. Exhaustion, sometimes these youth don't have the proper place to sleep. So maybe providing a hotel stay at night. That's been done for me in the past, and it was super awesome. It was a hotel in my hometown, and I really enjoyed my stay. And the next day I was rested and ready to, talk. If the issue is like hunger, maybe taking them out to eat or providing a snack at this event, before or after the event, taking them out to eat. And then, so this one's kind of not tangible, but it can be easily fixed. So fear of the unknown, we just get really nervous. So asking the young person, what they need to know, while also providing a surplus of information on the event, where to look if they get nervous, an itinerary of the event, letting them know who the audience will be, how many attendees there will be, the topic of discussion, the role of the young person, what the plan is for the entire day before, during, and after the event. And then also, if the barrier is like their nerves, in regards to talking to strangers, providing that point of contact. And then just building rapport, making sure that they feel comfortable enough to speak at the event. And that's pretty much all I've got. Thank you.
Great list. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a really good list. I really liked that, like in there, it was like, take them out to like lunch or breakfast. And that's a good opportunity to also build that trust with the youth, so that they feel more comfortable when they're speaking. And honestly, yeah, like the list was just perfect. So thank you.
Yeah, Irene's list was like perfect. I think like a few things that I might want to add is like, nowadays is like a lot of things are virtual. So making sure maybe they have like a good enough like laptop and good enough internet to connect, like that's always a big. And then also like having a space to like attend the meeting, like because you know you can't always do stuff wherever your home is. And I think also um like needing to work can be a big thing. And I think if possible, like financial compensation is like so helpful for your time. You know, because finances are a huge stress for most of us. And I think getting that like compensation for your time is like makes you feel really valued. And it's also just a big stress relief, I would say.
Thank you so much. Um, you know, I've been working with young people for a long time in my work. I mean, Irene and I have known each other since 2010, right? But I'm still learning so much from you all today. So I personally really appreciate your time today and helping us learn some skills that we really need to learn and really need to spend a lot of effort and time developing in ourselves as advocates. But I have my last question for you now. So I just want to remind everybody on the Zoom, if you have questions for Roxana or Irene or Cecilia, please go ahead and type those into the chat, because this is my last question, and then we'll be able to look at any questions that you all might have, but we're going to take those questions only through the chat. So if you have any questions, go ahead and type those into the chat box, please. And my last question for you all is kind of just like a catch-all open question, whatever you want to say. You know, you are speaking right now with a group of mostly adults who are here because they want to improve the way they work with young people and the way that they prioritize youth leadership in their work. So what's your parting advice for them? What do you want them to leave with?
Okay, so I wrote down everyone, young people and yourself alike, has experienced a different version of this life. Just because something is true for you, like social workers are badass social justice warriors, doesn't mean that it's true or for other people. So like a youth might have had a really negative experience with social workers, and their outlook on social workers might be dependent on that one experience. So just keep that in mind, keep an open mind, and remember that it's super important to be kind. These experiences can be extremely difficult and extremely difficult to share. And at the end of the day, we're all human and we're all trying to make a difference.
That was beautiful. I think my last thing that I would just, if you could take anything from what I said, it would be to really listen to them. And in doubt, if you don't know what is stopping them from speaking, if you don't know what's triggering for them, ask. You know, give them the opportunity to tell you what's intimidating them to share their story. If they have any fears that people from their past may show up to the event or whatever it is, because that's also huge. A huge issue too. So just in doubt, ask, and just really truly listen to hear, understand, and be empathetic.
Yeah, and I guess like what I would have to say is also just be aware of like the times right now. I think things like, especially for your students, look a lot different than they looked 2 years ago. And I know like for me personally, a lot of us like coming back to school after COVID, like a lot of our like social skills are really impacted. It was like an extremely stressful, basically 2 years. And I think just keep in mind kind of like what life looks like today. And I think also keep the lens that like they can be very fragile, and like their lived experience is very like raw and emotional. And I just think try to keep in mind that like, yeah, everybody's experience is different and nobody like truly understands like the emotions going on in someone else's head. And so just create like a really safe space for them, be super transparent with them about what's expected and what's to come. And yeah, and just like form a positive relationship with them. I think that it's a huge relief, is just to know, have someone there you're comfortable with, and have someone like being able to have someone who's your like go-to if you start feeling like emotional, or if you just have like a little question, like, and if you have a good enough relationship with them where you're just comfortable to do that, I think it's really huge.
Thank you all so much. There are a lot of comments about thanks and gratitude in the chat box. I know that everyone is really appreciative of your time today. You all are involved in different things that are keeping you busy right now. So taking an hour out of your day is a really big deal to come and speak with us. So thank you so much for that. And we do have at least one question so far. So again, if you have any questions for our, sorry about that, dropped my headphone. If you have any questions for our panel, please type them in to the chat box, but we do have one that I can see right now, which is, and I think I'm going to actually ask Roxana to start on this one, if you don't mind, because it's something that you and I have talked about a little bit, and then absolutely 100% open it up for Irene and Cecilia as well. But the question is, what do you think that we could do to get more young people interested in politics, whether that's careers in politics themselves or voting or just political issues in general?
Yeah, I think what really sparked my interest was that commissioners meeting, the prep that we did as well. We had like a little intro presentation of the commissioners, what was our commissioners, because we all lived around like the county. And so we knew who we were speaking to. We knew what they did. They also explained to us, because they, like our supervisor, she had experience in going and speaking at meetings. So she told us like what to expect from like each person's reaction maybe. Because, you know, like something she told us was like, you know, if they're not looking at you in the eye, don't worry about it. Like that's how they are. So don't worry about it. That was helpful, because then when you're speaking, you know, to not mind that. But being able to get all of this prep and know how it works helped. And the reason is because although like, yes, like in high school and in school, like you got government courses and things of that sort. But let's be realistic, when you're homeless and you're just trying to survive, you may be passing your classes, but you're not absorbing the information because your brain is literally telling you, you don't need to remember anything right now. You're going through a really tough time. And that's why it's so common for like people to forget while they're going through traumatic experiences. So giving them like a little, when they're going to speak, opening up their horizons, they may not even know that they can speak and they can be involved in politics and in their government, and how important it is for them to be citizens who are involved in their democracy, because that really just, it changes more than just their lives. It changes everyone in the community when people work together to make a change. And encouraging them to not have to share their stories, but, you know, take lessons that other people can learn from their stories and how that can incorporate into government and into policy change. And then also giving them a wide network of people to either intern for, work for, or just communicate with, so that they actually have a place to start, you know, like working in like as an intern or just shadowing someone in public office.
Cool, thank you. Cecilia, Irene, anything you want to jump in with on that one?
Just piggybacking off of what she said, simply letting the youth know that there is an opportunity. I would have never known that I could, you know, go and talk to Congress if it wasn't for, you know, Patricia's organization. I would have never felt like I had anything important to say had it been not for the organization. You know, we might not completely understand how impactful our experience can be in helping people make policies to ensure that others don't have to experience what we've been through.
Thank you. Cecilia, no pressure. I just want to make sure I create space for you to chime in if you want to, but no pressure at all.
I think, yeah, Irene and Roxanne said it. I think, yeah, just basically repeating what Irene said, just like, yeah, like understanding that your, you know, your story, your lived experience, like could have real world impacts. Like if, you know, if you want to get involved in that, I think it's huge, and it's really meaningful, and I think it makes you so much more inspired to do something with it.
Cool, thank you. very much. We have another question that is actually one that I've kind of struggled with a little bit myself over time is, I'll just read it directly. You mentioned compensating young people for their time and that being important. The question is, does that ever feel weird and transactional to you? And are there better or worse ways for an organization to go about, letting you know that you're going to be compensated for a particular contribution that you're making?
So in my experience, I've been compensated by organizations that I have done a lot of work with, who have built a lot of rapport with me, who I know I feel on a personal level. So it doesn't feel transactional. It feels more like they value me. But that one experience that I had mentioned that could have been better, if they had paid me, I would have felt even more bribed. But like I said before, because I didn't have that rapport would have a relationship with them, I felt like them buying me clothes and them feeding me was kind of more of a bribe. And I think it definitely depends more on the relationship. Also, it's been a pleasant surprise after the fact to know that I was getting money when I didn't know that I was originally going to be paid for an event. So maybe making time to build that rapport and then letting the youth know, like, oh, by the way, we also want to pay you, not to bribe you, but to just let you know that we really appreciate your input on this.
100%. And I can totally see how that can be like a double-edged sword. Another thing is like your rhetoric and how you're phrasing it. If you go to the youth and you're like, do you have any needs right now? How can we help you like get to and from the engagement? And like maybe after the engagement, you can say, well, what do you think is your biggest need right now so that we can help you meet that? And whether it be a gift card to Subway. I know that was like when I was like in high school, and I did some stuff about youth homelessness, like they would just give us like $20 gift cards to Subway to make sure that we were getting food. So maybe that would make it a little less transactional, but again, just asking them, what if they don't even have like, for example, I don't know, bed sheets and they just need like I don't know, a gift card to like Bed Bath and Beyond. And it's just literally like what Irene is saying, just making sure to establish that relationship and ask the youth what it is that they need. Because another thing is if they're taking time out of their class schedule or their work schedule to go speak at the engagement, they're missing out from their own ability to be self-sufficient. So it would be helpful if the organization did provide some type of funding to assist them and not only getting there, but to make up for what they're missing in work or whatnot.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think it really just depends on how you kind of present the options. It's just like if someone was just like, come speak at this event, we'll pay you $50, like that would be transaction, like that would feel very transactional. That would be like, come put on this show with your story and then we'll give you money. But if you present it in a way as like, we really appreciate, if you did X, Y, and Z because we value you so much. And then you just say that you recognize that the person is taking time out of their day and like that they are providing you a service. And I think present it in that way and just be like, we'd like to offer some compensation. Yeah, I think. And also just make sure like the youth would be okay doing the work even if they weren't getting paid. Cause like, I think like that's the case for me. Like I would do this, like I'd be happy to do any of it without getting paid, but like it's just very like appreciated. And especially if you have personal rapport with them, it doesn't feel transactional.
Thanks you all for those answers. We have time for one more question. I don't see any more in the chat box, but I'll just kind of pause for a few seconds in case anyone has a burning question that they would like to type in. I never advanced the slide to the question slide, but I think everybody figured it out. Okay, I think I've waited for enough seconds to give people a chance to type in and hit send or whatever on the chat box. So I want to thank you. Oh, here actually is one other question. Are there groups that you three would recommend? Like obviously Schoolhouse Connection, we all have relationships with you and we're very lucky to have those relationships with you. But are there other groups that you've worked with that like if a young person wants to get involved in a group that you would recommend? I mean, I don't know like how that process would be negotiated, but like have you just ever reached out to a group because you just were interested in them and wanted to work with them, or and are there groups that you would recommend? It's a tough question.
Yeah, so I kind of found out about my youth advocacy group through a service provider. And so that introduced me to a bunch of other groups. And so there's this national group, actually, they're called True Colors United. And it's a national group of youth with lived experience who come and talk about how we can advocate in better ways and what bills are being introduced and all of these fun stuff. And we also have a special focus on youth who identify as LGBTQ+. And so I'm putting a link in the chat box in case you have youth who may be interested. And so it's great. We meet every month, I believe, like on a Tuesday, like at 6 p.m. And this actually it can introduce your youth to other youth in their state, because again, it's a national thing. And like we all introduce ourselves from our city and state and everything like that. So.
Thanks, Roxana.
Yeah, and on a lower level, I'm involved with a group here at UCLA called Bruin Guardian Scholars, which is like they provide support to foster youth and homeless youth, and they're a great organization because they provide us support, and then they also like have internship opportunities down the line. And honestly, I think I just found out about them like when I started college. I honestly think I just Googled like UCLA McKinney-Vento or something, and I just found them online. But I think like if the youths are college students, kind of just start looking at the campus. And I also know here there's a lot of clubs that do advocacy work. And yeah, that's where I've started.
Good suggestions, you all.
Or actually, if I can chime in, or just, as a service provider, maybe asking individual youth that you see leadership skills in and offering them to make a youth advocacy group if they're interested and comfortable enough and brave enough to do it. But it really just starts with you all and seeing those special skills and characteristics in the youth and encouraging them to use it and shine and do what they want to do.
Awesome. Oops, I went too fast. Thank you all so much. Round of applause for you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your expertise. Thank you for giving us all, including myself, I'll just speak for myself, giving me some new lessons of things that, I know that I can improve on and I can do better. So I really appreciate you doing that and sharing that expertise with me personally. So I know that there's lots coming in on the chat box too, a lot of gratitude for you all and for your time and expertise today. But we are basically at our time. So I'm going to turn it over to Lisa, who has some information to share about some other upcoming opportunities that you all might be interested in. So Lisa, take it away.
Great, thanks. And thank you to our expert panel. I also learned a lot, so I appreciate it. I'm sorry to do all the boring stuff after that terrific conversation, but really quickly, I'm just putting a few things in the chat for everyone. Our virtual whiteboard has a lot of information. Please sign in and answer the icebreaker because it'll help us, even though it's an icebreaker, it'll help us plan for next month's meeting. Excuse me, sorry, we're running out of time. So I was going to do a screen share of this document, but instead I'm just gonna put a link in and suggest that you look at it. This is a resource list that we developed with additional resources on today's topic. So we've been doing one for each of the topics of our community of practice. So this one is on youth leadership and advocacy. And so there are some resources for organizations And then there are also some resources directly for young people who may be interested in advocacy. So for example, something on strategic sharing and so on. So if you have time, please check that out. And then finally, in the last 30 seconds, a quick plug for our next community of practice meeting. It's going to be November 10th at 2:00 Eastern. Sorry for those of you not in Eastern time, but that timing is Eastern. And it's going to focus on the year in review and the year ahead. And we've got some great speakers. We have Alianne Anderson from SchoolHouse Connection. And then also we'll have speakers from the National Conference of State Legislatures. And so we'll be talking to them. I think it'll be really informative. This time, just because it was a shorter session, we didn't do state updates and have you all tell us your wins. So please save those and you can tell us the 2 months worth of wins at our November meeting. So thank you again for joining us. Please join us again. And there's a bunch of stuff in the chat. So maybe we'll leave that live for just a minute or two after the time in case anyone didn't get a chance to click on any of those. But thank you again to our speakers. Thank you to all of you for attending and engaging with us. And we hope to see you on November 10th.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Thanks again.